Life and death, as we find out, are part of the same journey, like going from one room to another. In fact, uh, they often call, after you pass the portal of death, they call that the upper room. And we ourselves, we are powered by a will. We have willpower. We're powered by the will, but our will is actually tethered to a greater will, and that greater will actually is from the that past that portal of death, and it is from that domain that our destiny is governed. Now, sometimes we argue, do we have a free will? Well, we don't have a free will if it's tethered. However, what we have is we have free choice. We're freely able to make our choices, but that freedom and those choices would mean nothing, really, if our actions and our gestures that resulted from those choices actually were only applicable to this three-dimensional reality that we live in now. And because we're very visual and sensory and very immediate, we tend to separate life and death, and we don't tend to see them as a continuum. Uh, because of this, and actually from not being able to remember that prior to our birth, we actually made an agreement, our first agreement. We don't think of ourselves as emissaries coming into this reality to gather awareness. We don't, quote, see, unquote, that we're completing an agreement. So we tend to, you could say, squander our energy, and you could also say to a degree corrupt our intent in all the social dynamics that we have to navigate and go through. And in that sense, we lose our communication with that upper room, so to speak. So everything ultimately comes down to belief, because the beliefs, our beliefs, are what drive our actions and our intent. And if we don't see our importance for being a specific type of person, i.e., a seeker of awareness, as it is, and as it relates to our purpose, if we don't see that, then we don't believe we have an inherent purpose. A purpose which is not of our choosing, but one that we were intended and born to complete, as is explained in the first agreement. So if you take a look at your inherent purpose, which it comes down to gathering awareness and becoming more and more aware, then all of this makes sense. This three-dimensional reality, birth, life, and then after the portal of death, it all makes sense. It all hangs together. You know, if you try to devise your own purpose, then it's a constant struggle of doubt and difficulty. So that is to say that if you don't know why you pass the portal of death, if you don't know why life ends and then in continuum past the portal of death, what happens in the next stage of your journey, then you really can't know how to prepare and how to live correctly to enter that next phase. We continue to not learn basically because we're not taught, and we don't discover on our own the underlying spiritual structure of awareness. It's difficult at best because we live in a paradox. You know, quantum mechanics tell us that there are particles, there are actual physical particles without any mass. That is totally outside the bounds of our reason and our logic, but that's the world we live in, and actually the greater nature of reality or realities, the paradox is even more magical, mysterious, and mystic, however you want to call it. And saying that is to say that awareness itself is a substance. It's a spiritual substance. Again, if you take our reality and you look at it, there's oxygen and carbon dioxide, and we know that we take one in to live, which is oxygen, and the trees and plants, etc., take in the carbon dioxide for their life. But we don't see oxygen and carbon dioxide either. So as our awareness grows and answers the questions of our existence, eventually this awareness of the Spirit comes to equal and then even surpasses in influence and power the influence of the social three-dimensional world and the worldly cognitive system. A new spiritual cognitive system of, quote, seeing, unquote, seeing worldly events from the spiritual awareness becomes the greater truth in a new set of beliefs. So we'll just continue this discussions in the next video. If you would like to comment or reply, certainly feel free to do that, and then we can continue the discussion as appropriate.